So I thought I'd give you a quick video talk through of this slide that I've got in front of us, which is the categories to think about when buying a new bike. So, looks a little bit confusing. Let's dive into it. I'm going to start with the first green arrow, or a green branch on this mind map. So the key thing when you're looking at buying a new bike is to be really honest about what your usage or purpose of it is going to be for the bike that you're going to get. And the way you want to think about this, what are you going to be doing for the majority of your time rather than occasionally? There'll be uh, marketing material or an aspiration or oh shiny thing. Be really honest with yourself. What is it you're actually going to use the bike for the vast majority of the time? Because that's where you're going to get most value. It's an expensive purchase, so you want to make sure you optimize that. A couple of options here to think about in terms of either off-road bikes. Some people might be looking at new mountain bikes. Is the aspiration around getting a gravel bike? For triathlon, the big decision you're allowed to be looking at making is in this, which is on road, and the decisions around, do I want to go for a more specialist TT/triathlon bike, or am I looking at more of a standard road bike? In which case, are you looking at an aero one where it's specifically set up for more of an aerodynamic position and the emphasis is on aerodynamics, versus some which is set up more for endurance. So if you're looking at shorter races, you might want to go more aero. If you're looking at using it for longer races, or you are looking at doing any long distance cycling, you might want to consider looking at more of an endurance bike. It really depends on your balance between performance and comfort. More of an endurance bike will be slightly more comfortable in terms of the geometry and the frame design to allow you to prioritize comfort as opposed to outright speed. It's always going to be a trade-off in this kind of triangle trade-off between comfort, aerodynamics, and the power that you can put out. If you go for more aerodynamics, it might be that you can't hold a position for as long. If you go for something that's more powerful from a raw power output, it may be that you can't hold slightly the same type of aerodynamic position. So it's this trade-off that you're considering. So once you've identified what kind of bike you're looking at, then you always come in and say, well, what kind of frame am I looking at? And lined up or aligned to the usage is the geometry or the purpose of the frame. So as you start to build your knowledge about bikes and the design of bikes, you'll start to see things that, okay, if I have a certain geometry in the frame, so the angles between all the different joints, that's going to give me more of a performant or more of a relaxed type of position on the bike. Some bike designs will be highly twitchy or responsive. So one person's responsive handling on a bike will be another person's twitchy bike. One person's bike, so it's essentially to do with the where you're going to steer it and the angles around the head tube, the very front part of the bike. Someone else might have something which is it transfers power really well. It feels really lively, so you press the pedals and the bike responds really quickly. Normally, that's because the rear triangle is pretty stiff. For someone else, that stiffness could be like, God, I come off that bike and I feel like I've just been battered. Every single vibration is coming through the bike. For some people, they really like that. It means that every single ounce of power they've got is getting transmitted into forward momentum. For other people, it's super uncomfortable and they come off the bike having ridden something where they've got through it and survived it as opposed to really enjoying it. So that's where you do some of these trade-offs. It's unlikely, unless you're quite specialist, you understand the angles, etc., and the geometry. But reading the description of what the bike is designed for and doing some comparison, you can start to build that knowledge. Okay, it's designed for X. Okay, the drawback of that or the counter to it is Y. There's always something you're trading off. It might be price, it might be weight, it might be stiffness, it might be responsiveness, it might be comfort, aerodynamics. So generally, there's a trade-off between all these things. There's something in your materials as well. For the vast majority of people looking at carbon bikes, once you've understood, so I'm going for, let's just say for example, I'm going for a road bike, and it's going to have aerodynamic focus. It's carbon one. The geometry is designed for that. The next thing you're going to come into this area over here, so the components and the budget. So these things can be considered pretty almost simultaneously. Again, it's always about the offset you've got. When you look at the budget, and this if you're not familiar with bikes, there's something in you can go down which is just the cost, price discovery versus fixed price. So that idea is if you come in with a budget and you know you have X amount to spend, £500, £1,000, £3,000, £10,000, whatever it is, you say, right, this is the budget I've got. I can't go above it, but I'm willing to spend it all. The other route you can come in is price discovery. I've got a range of a budget. I want to get value for money, but actually I'm more driven by getting a bike that's going to meet my needs and then seeing the type of price that that's going to cost and then working out if I can afford it and where the trade-offs are. For most people, that's a much more natural approach in this, and it can be quite unsettling because you're not very familiar coming into buying a bike. It's like, because they all also seem expensive because it's a lot of money having to put down. And it's like, how much? Bikes are pretty pricey. So what can you do to make sure you're getting value for money and also you're matching your needs? So you're not spending money unnecessarily, but equally, if you are looking for a certain performance level or quality level, you're spending enough to get you that and not coming up short and then regretting spending probably quite a lot of money, but in something that's not actually what you really want or need. So the ways you consider that is one of the things that you can play with the price and the perceived value is looking at this mix between new, last year's models or older models, and secondhand. Broadly on bikes, my advice is to go for older models to optimize the value proposition. You can go for new, you're paying a lot for the fact that it's the new latest model. I would advise, in terms of a value proposition, that you'll get more for your money by going for a year before, 2 years before, because you're more likely, with the same amount of money, you're likely to be able to get higher quality components, although they are older in design and things, you're more likely to get something which is better for your money. If you want to go for new, go for it. If it's something you love, but just be aware that you might be able to get something better. Is a very personal approach on this. But last year's models made you get the right size. So this is the thing: is you go last year, you have a more restricted choice. But if you can find the right thing, I think that's where you get the greatest ratio between value and product price. The last one is and this is secondhand. My advice: avoid secondhand. A lot of people are successful in it. A lot of people get burnt by it. So the reason you get burnt is you don't have necessarily a good understanding of the history of that bike. You can get things which are a lot cheaper, and you might be lucky. But if that bike has ever had a bad history, then you can end up being burnt. If you know the person who's selling it to you and you're confident in the history, then you can go for it. If you're going to do that, I would definitely ask for a local bike shop to do a full service on it, and you can come to an agreement financially with the seller to have you pay for that service, and with the proviso that if there's a flaw in it, you don't buy the bike. So there's some agreement you can come to there, so that you get confidence of the service, and you get confidence you're buying something that hasn't got any inherent flaws in it. The big one that's very, very hard to know is in a carbon bike, has it ever had a crash? Carbon doesn't, it won't bend, so you have to look at it to see is there any fractures in this, and it's quite a hard thing to do. You can look for other symptoms, scrape paint and things, but there's ways in which you can have a flaw in the frame and not really know about it. And when it fails, generally carbon will fail catastrophically, the whole thing will go, as opposed to if you've got a bike which is steel frame and it's bent or out of shape after a crash, you can tell that because things aren't true. Last in the choice around the cost and where you can be the cost of what you're going to be getting in terms of value is the choice between online, local independent, or a chain. So chain like Evans, Halfords, etc. The big brand chains who tend to be more price competitive than a local independent. With the local independent, though, quite often they can print some accessories and things, or you can start to build a relationship with them to do with servicing. So you're not confident servicing your own bike. Quite often local independents will throw in something to do with servicing that bike for you. If there's any problems, you can take it straight back to them. And it's likely you'll be dealing with similar people in the bigger chains. Quite often the staff rotate, there's different people on different shifts, etc. The one where you're going to get most value, but you're going to get least personalization of the experience in terms of having a face-to-face person to talk to is going online. If you're confident about buying online, it can also offer you quite a lot of customization. I have bought online, my Canyon's an online purchase, TT bike. You get a lot of your money from that, but you take the risk that two risks actually. If there's a problem with it, sending it back to Germany is problematic. You get a shipping box and things, but it's not as straightforward as wheeling something, maintenance down around the corner. And then also you have to do a little bit of your own setup. It's quite straightforward, but if you're not confident in that, it can be more challenging. So then into the last area, which is really when you buy a bike, what are you actually considering? So the big thing to look at is here is in the components, you're then starting to consider the group set. Taking some broadly, there's three main providers of group sets, and they provide them across each of the bike brands. So you have a branded company, Canyon, and it uses Shimano, SRAM, Campagnolo as the group sets, and it's the same group set. If it's a SRAM group set, it'll be the same stuff that's on a Trek bike, it's on a Cannondale bike. So the group set is one of the biggest differentiators in the price. What you want to do is start to look at the group set and say, first choice normally is electronic or is it manual? There's pros and cons for both. Electronic can be very beneficial, particularly on a triathlon bike. It's much less required on a standard road bike. A triathlon bike where you're in potentially different positions for shifting, so you can be on the aero bars or you can be on the base bar. The ability to have shifters to just click in both positions is really useful. If you're manual, you have to have the shifters in one place because it's a cable, and the cable can only stretch to one point, so you've got them in the end of the aero bars, and you don't have them in the bar ends. That's why it costs to have the electronic shifters. It's not, you don't have to have it, but the price of the electronic shifter sets are now getting lower and lower, so it's now reasonably compatible with some of the mid-level sets. The other considerations are on your brakes and whether the rim or disc. That has an impact on your wheels. So you cannot use rim brakes on disc wheels. So wheels that are designed for disc brakes and vice versa, because the braking surfaces are in two different places and they're not compatible. So if you're going to go with one, then you have to make sure that your wheels you can buy separate and do separate upgrades, which is why this is a little bit more of a consideration. Rim brakes are absolutely fine. They work quite well. The hard part is rim brakes with small aero levers on a TT bike. When it's a carbon wheel in the wet, it might not have as much stopping power particularly depends on the brake pads you've got on it. Carbon's pretty slidey, so there's an element there. It also depends on the environment you live in. So here in the mountains, having disc brakes is nice, but professionals have been flying down these mountain and run brakes for 50 years, and it's completely doable. In my opinion, it's more of an issue on mountain bikes as it is on road bikes. Road bikes, either types of brakes are fine. When you're looking at the shifting, you can also consider a little bit in this area here, which is what is the size of the gear ratios, what's the size of the chain rings, what size is your rear cassette, and that's we can customize it a little bit. Similar, another big area of the kind of the components, not as like cassette, but it's the wheels. So on the wheels, what type of wheels have you got? First one being how compatible are they with different tire systems? So you get tubeless, where there's no inner tube. You get tubular or tubs, which you don't get very much nowadays, which is the old style racing tires, which are a complete system. The reason why they used to have them is if you got a puncture on it, the tire stays on your wheel, stays on your rim, so that it's safer when you're in a big peloton. Whereas if you've got a system where the tire deflates rapidly and then comes off with you steer or do a big turn, then in a peloton it can be more dangerous. That's historically why these existed, but they're quite rare and you generally avoid them. Some people swear by them, but generally for most people avoid them. They're a bit too specialist. And then the last one is the traditional tube / inner tube / clincher. And the reason they're called that is because the tire is clinched onto the rim due to the pressure of the inner tube. Special design with the tire hooks on, which makes them sometimes a little bit tricky to get on and off depending on the tire type you've got. There's some stuff in here as well on pedals. And we'll be looking at clipless pedals, mountain bike style, and then you get road style with three main types. You get the Speedway, which is taken over by Wahoo, you get Look, and then you get Shimano, and they're not compatible. Shoes are generally switchable across when you change the cleat, but the pedal needs to match the cleat, and you can't swap. It's a different pedal system. You can't just mix and match. Another thing to consider is power tracking. So most common is in cranks or pedals where you get power. Previously there was an hub and wheel power, so it tracked the power you put through the torque and wheel. The rear wheel is not as common anymore. Pros and cons in both of those. Cranks generally are a little bit more reliable-ish because pedals go through more. There's more wear and tear on pedals. They're more likely to get thumped. You're kicking your foot in and out of them. You've got more likelihood of putting mud and things in them, whereas a crank generally is a bit simpler. Having said that, you see the history that Shimano have had with their cranks and the history of snapping and recalls on them, so it's not a slam dunk. And then there's some additions in here. The advice, therefore, to summarise this, because it's 20 minutes, hopefully you've watched it, speed it up a little bit, is decide the type of bike you want in terms of TT, aero, endurance. Do some research on the online site. So there's loads. You can just type in best bike 2024 or wherever you're watching this, so for 24. Type that in and you'll start to get a range of understanding. Then in parallel, put a few different tabs. Look at Shimano, look at SRAM, look at Campagnolo, but that's less common. So the two main ones, SRAM and Shimano, and understand the grading between their most high-end professional quality group sets down to the lowest ones. Most common for most people who are buying an upgrade bike would be Shimano or SRAM, but Shimano 105 or Ultegra. The jump up from that to start to look at Dura Ace and things is much more on the professional side. But if you're looking between 105, which is the slightly lower price point, and the Ultegra, then there's a lot in there in terms of the quality of the components. And essentially what you end up with is something where the cheaper the component, it will work, it doesn't age so well. So maintenance is more difficult on it, and potentially it's more weight, but it's also less robust. As you move up, the quality of the components, the quality of the metal, the tolerances that are allowed, and the adjustability and maintenance is higher. Quite often, you'll therefore get more lifespan out of a component that's, although the initial purchase price is more, you'll get more longevity of it. Give you a bit of an idea, the majority of my components on my bikes are Shimano Ultegra. Some of them, when I've done replacements, I've gone down to 105. Cassettes that wear out 105. Derailleurs tend to be Ultegra because you don't wear it at derailleur. Shifters tend to go towards Ultegra. They are lighter, they're strong, and I don't need to go up any higher than that in the range because you start to say professional in. On the SRAM side, I'm less familiar. The Canyon's got Rival is the point, which is kind of equivalent to the 105 ish on SRAM to Shimano comparison. That's it. So think about the type of bike you want, work out the type of range from each of the major brands where you're looking at price point, which is driven primarily by a group set. And then the wheels are something where there's a little bit of pros and cons. You can get more basic wheels and upgrade them as a set purchase, or you can have a better wheel set in your purchase. It's going to cost you more. And then it depends whether you want to have two sets of wheels or not. For some people, they want cheaper stock wheels, spend the money on the bike, and then if they feel they need, they can upgrade wheels at a separate purchase. Quite expensive if you get upgraded wheels, £1,000, maybe more, get some less, but you know, maybe look at £1,000 plus for an upgraded dedicated set of wheels, and then they take the original wheels and use them for commuting or standard training, or in the winter when the weather's a bit awful. So there's some choices there, and that's where you start to see the Asian price of what you're buying. Hopefully that's helpful. And if there's any questions, just reach out to us via socials, or if you're private coach athlete, you can reach out to us directly on our calls. Okay, take care. Bye.